I am not telling you that they specifically can be reasoned with. I understand that things have happened to you in the past. I understand that they hurt. My point is not that. My point is that every person who labels themselves a conservative is not those people. Alrighty, apparently the Supreme Court is being a problem, and this is meaning that if I actually still had my bet with Jimmy Snow, then he might actually be getting some money from me if I had any. But let's go ahead and take a look at the article after we take a look at the fan art section. So the first one we have here is from Kidderdoodle. This is actually a perfect. This is a perfect one for an episode about abortion rights. I just killed a child. No, this was I was playing Chrono Cross on stream, and I definitely killed an enemy that was a boss. They came back as a party member later, but I swear to God I killed them. Admiral Zostar, thank you for redeeming your points for an owl. The next one we have is from Avenger138. Behold, Suris from the Dark Timeline. Is that the Dark Timeline? Are you sure? I don't know if that's the Dark Timeline. The last one we have is from Ivana Dragmeyer. Attack on Marjorie Titan Green 2 Electric Boogaloo and the Ultimate Bonk. This is what the work in progress Ultimate Bonk was for from the previous bit from Ivana Dragmeyer. So here we are. I just want somebody to take this scene right here and just play the freaking Attack on Titan theme for this. Ivana Dragmeyer, thank you for redeeming your points for an you fucking monster. Also, Admiral Zostar, thank you for redeeming your points for an owl. With that said, as always, everybody, thank you for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future episode, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look. I need to go ahead and first point out that the article is written in such a way that you would think that this part already happened, but it's a draft. It's a draft. We're not quite there yet. But I should note that the title is a bit alarmist. Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights, comma, draft opinion shows. But let's take a look at all of these here. Caution bans off our bodies, let their hearts beat. Expose and shut down the abortion industrial complex now. My God, I've never seen so many Karens united in one area. Can you imagine a whole bunch of people just constantly shrieking shrilly with their lungs, I want people to control my body? Can you imagine that? Because that's what I'm seeing here. I say this to enumerate a point, or illuminate a point that people have been making for a while, and point out that it's bullshit. Anytime somebody's like, actually, only women should have conversations about abortion, fuck you, you're wrong, and this is a prime example of why you're wrong, because you don't necessarily have a higher likelihood of getting the right decision that way. I say that because there are just as many people who are conservative and agree that their bodies should be nothing more than things that are, what is the best way to put this? Things that are controlled by government regulations, and not necessarily things that they can have their own volition over. A hypothetical child in their ideal world has more power over their body than they do. But anyways, let's read the actual article itself. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, according to an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico. The draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed the federal constitution protections of abortion rights in a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that largely maintained the right Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Alito writes, we hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. He writes in a document labeled Opinion of the Court. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elective representatives. It's states' rights again. It's states' rights again. No, and Salem, I do agree that like we can hold people who will actually be affected by particular issues. We can hold their opinions in higher regard, but the ludicrous mindset that seems to permeate a lot of people, especially here on the left, that you must be in that in-group in order to have an opinion, I have issue with. I've always had issues with that. And I've seen that used as an argument from conservative women against people. And I've seen that as an argument used by people who call themselves, or, you know, say that they are on the left and say, hey, you're not a woman, so you don't actually get to have a decision here. And it's like, okay, cool, but I'm on your side, and you need more people on your side, and you are literally just shrinking your numbers because you don't have a logical reason. I can't even validate it with a logical reason at this point. Not you specifically, but I've had this conversation. It's a frustrating one because, like, on a gut level, it feels right, but then you take a moment to think about it, and you're like, okay, no, not really. Don't silence that group takeaway, but that isn't don't speak out, or as just don't silence the ones. Don't silence people who are on your side. But Planned Parenthood versus Casey was a United States court decision regarding abortion. Basically, the court upheld that you had the right to have an abortion, and they were basing it off of what was already established in Roe v. Wade, specifically. So the case arose from a challenge to 5 provisions of the Pennsylvania Abortion Control Act of 1982. Among the provisions were requirements for a waiting period, spousal notice, shit like that. Basically, the idea was to put so many artificial restrictions on getting abortion, but still making abortion technically legal. And the Supreme Court had to step in on that and go, actually, no. Actually, stop. Anyway, Salem says, would it be better if women's rights could only be legalized and voted on by women? Because even if there are conservative women who are working against it, it would take out a variable that is leaning rights against women in favor to bring the progression and probability in favor of women. No, not necessarily, because at that point you're making the exact same gamble. You're making the exact same gamble that there are more women who want rights to abortion than don't. In the United States in general, there are more people on both ends of the gender spectrum that want people to have rights to abortion. Like, it is a majority of people in the United States that are in favor of abortion. Changing it to only being women that can vote for it ends up creating issues there. And then now you have to ask the question, like, do you allow trans women to vote for it? They don't technically have uteruses in many cases. Do you then allow trans men to vote for it? Because in many cases they do have uteruses. It's just easier to not do that. It's good to speak for human rights always. Just don't be a dumbass and respectful and not white knighting if possible. Yeah, don't be a patronizing white knight. Don't be like, well, milady, I am fighting for your bodily rights. Like, no, just be a good person, be a good ally. It's easier to do it as a default thing than a performative thing. It really is. Also remember that outside opinions can provide valuable input. Yeah, because at that point we're having the opinion that, or we have the conversation like, should I not be allowed to vote in favor of the rights of my partner, Raz, merely because I don't have a uterus? She doesn't have a uterus either. Like, those things were removed. So, what? Does she not get an opinion because they were removed? Or are we now in the position where we have to have this completely arbitrary based on what happens to be in your body or not? So do we just perform x-rays or check people's medical histories in order to make it happen? Again, much simpler just to say, if you exist within the boundaries of the country, you get to vote. But let's take a look at the initial draft here, because it is lengthy. There are 98 pages here. We'll look at the first bit and then move on here. Abortion presents a profound moral issue on which Americans hold sharply conflicting views. Some believe fervently that a human person comes into being at conception and that abortion ends an innocent life. Others feel just as strongly that any regulations of abortion invade a woman's rights to control her own body and prevents women from achieving full equality. Still, others in a third group think that abortion should be allowed under some but not all circumstances, and those within this group hold a variety of views about the particular restrictions that should be imposed. For the first 185 years after the adoption of the Constitution, each state was permitted to address the issue in accordance with the views of its citizens. Okay, yep. It's just states' rights. It is just states' rights. Okay. Okay, before we continue, can we have a quick aside to talk about the states' rights conversation? Can we do that? Yeah, it's my stream. I can control whether or not that happens. That's happening right now. Okay, so when someone brings up the states' rights conversation, ask them with your whole chest if something is right or wrong. Does that change because of geography? Does arbitrary geography change whether or not something is good or bad? When somebody goes, I think slavery is bad and wrong, but I think we should leave the decision up to the states individually. Do you think that there is something magical about the fucking dirt in random states that makes slavery better in those states? Is there something about that geographical location that makes things more or less important? No, there's nothing about the geography that changes jack shit. So instead, let's have the conversation about whether or not should or should not as a total thing. That's the conversation. And at that point, now we can have a much cleaner conversation about my opinion that yes, women should have the right to abort. If the child is in their body and they do not want it, they should have the ability to remove it. If it cannot survive outside the body when they remove it, then guess what? It just doesn't survive. Sucks. But there's a billion other ways kids can die in the world, and I don't give a fuck. I don't. I value the currently existing life of an individual more than the hypothetical existence of a potential human being that has not yet had their first breath or any life experiences to quantify them as a being yet. If you want to say they're human at all stages, cool. They are human at all stages. I don't care. They're a person at all stages. Cool. They're a person at all stages. I don't care. I don't have to care because I do not believe that their personhood, their quantifiable experiences of nil, outweighs the established person that currently is here. I do not think that person, at whatever level of personhood you grant, is more important. And go ahead, go into the comment section. Tell me why I'm wrong. Give me that engagement. It's what I want. You coming into my comment section and shrieking about how actually women's bodies should be controlled by the government? Go ahead, do it. I am 100% in favor of you not only making a fool of yourself on a public platform, but also contributing cleanly to my paycheck because I made you angry. Anyways, continuing on. Deliberations on controversial cases in the past have been fluid. Justices can and sometimes do change their votes as draft opinions circulate and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote trading. Sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it's published, likely in the next 2 months. The immediate impact of the ruling as drafted in February would be to end a half-century guarantee of federal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. It's unclear if there have been subsequent changes to the draft. No draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. The unprecedented revelation is bound to intensify the debate over what was already the most controversial case on the docket this term. Not that it should have been. The draft opinion offers an extraordinary window into the justice's deliberation in one of the most consequential cases before the court in the last 5 decades. Some court watchers predicted that the conservative majority would slice away at abortion rights without flatly overturning a 49-year-old precedent. The draft shows that the court is looking to reject Roe's logic and legal protections. Okay, can I just say, and this is not me trying to make a call to action, this is a hypothetical world that I think we need to consider. But at what stage in this conversation do we accept that the legal system has failed? Now, it's not yet. That hasn't quite happened yet here. But we as citizens are supposed to be able to put faith in the legal system because we're supposed to be governed by the legal system. We are supposed to be able to have a say in what goes on in the legal system. But when it comes to the Supreme Court, we don't really get that. We don't vote the Supreme Court people in. We have only a marginal ability to vote for the people who get the people in the Supreme Court in. And getting somebody onto the Supreme Court has a shit ton of bureaucratic red tape, as we saw during the last bits of Obama's era and Trump's era, where Trump, with his majority, was able to just push justices through willy-nilly. And Obama, no matter how many times he tried to push somebody through, Mitch McConnell and others would just block it and say, actually, no, we're just not going to have the conversation about that right now until we can finally get another person in. Let me know in the comment section at what stage can you make that call? Because I don't know. I don't know at what stage you literally just go, hey, the legal system has failed here. How do we take that into our own hands? And in case of abortion rights, unfortunately, taking it into your own hands really comes down to using a clothes hanger, realistically, and then having to fight for that right. But we know that abortions of that caliber are always going to be a lot less safe. They come with a lot more risk. Abortions are going to happen no matter what. But at the end of the day, you need to have the conversation about what makes them safe. If we know this procedure is going to happen, no matter what we do we do to make it safe? I want to see what happens. Because, like, at the end of the day, it's not just that women can or cannot get an abortion. There are women in other states who have already had to deal with the legal system coming down on them for having miscarriages because of a lot of laws that have been happening recently. So, like, we've got issues right now. If they have an issue with natural miscarriages, they should sue God. I feel like the existence of miscarriages is already a good enough argument against people who hate abortion. Abortion's bad. It's not God's will. God does abortions all the time. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. Let's continue reading this. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. All right, let's go ahead and take that part of the quote already from Justice Alito. Roe was egregiously wrong. We don't have a why. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak. Okay, cool. That is still vague enough. It tells us nothing. And the decision has damaging consequences. Okay, cool. That, again, tells us nothing. I do not know what those consequences are, nor do I believe they exist. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. Yeah, it's almost as if people get mad that other people have rights. You cannot make a decision based on some people like this and other people don't like this. That's a terrible way to actually, like, make any decision. The decision in the Supreme Court for Roe v. Wade was not made to unite the nation. It was made to protect women's rights to their own privacy. That's what it is, and that's what it was. It's not there so that people can or cannot agree with it more. What the fuck is that reasoning? A person familiar with court's deliberations said that 4 of the other Republican-appointed justices had voted with Alito in the conference held amongst the justices after hearing oral arguments in December, and that lineup remains unchanged as of this week. The 3 Democratic-appointed justices are working on one or more dissents according to the person. How Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote and whether he will join an already written opinion or draft his own is unclear. This is kind of a problem I have with the Supreme Court system as it exists. The fact that we can have a majority of one particular political party in the justice system creates a problems to begin with. Creates a huge problem to begin with. And the fact that you can use political bureaucracy to affect the amount of judges you have, as we saw during the Trump presidency, and the fact that justices are for life appointments, so it's not like there's a whole lot we can do about it once it happens, kind of a problem. The document, labeled as a first draft of the majority opinion, includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th. If the Alito draft is adopted, it would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over the state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. A Supreme Court spokesperson declined to comment or make another representative of the court available to answer questions about the draft document. That's agitating. Politico received a copy of the draft opinion from a person familiar with the course proceedings in the Mississippi case, along with other details supporting the authenticity of the document. The draft opinion runs 98 pages, including a 31-page appendix of historical state abortion laws. None of those should be relevant here. Again, the geography does not matter. The document is replete with citations to previous court decisions, books, and other authorities, and includes 118 footnotes. The appearance and timing of this draft are consistent with court practice. The disclosure of Alito's majority opinion draft, a rare breach of Supreme Court secrecy and tradition around its deliberations, comes as all sides in the abortion debate are girding for the ruling. Speculation about the looming decision has been intense since the December oral arguments indicated a majority was inclined to support the Mississippi law. Under long-standing court procedures, justices hold preliminary votes on cases shortly after argument and assign a member of the majority to write a draft of the court's opinion. The draft is often amended in consultation with other justices, and in some cases, the justices change their votes altogether, creating the possibility that current alignments on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization could change. The Chief Justice typically assigns majority opinions when he is in the majority. When he is not, the decision is typically made by the most senior justice of the majority. All right, let's take a look at the specifics here. Exceptionally weak. A George W. Bush appointee who joined the court in 26, Alito argues that the 1973 abortion rights ruling was an ill-conceived and deeply flawed decision that invented a right mentioned nowhere in the Constitution and unwisely sought to wrench the contentious issue away from the political branches of the government. Okay, can we talk about rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution? So the Constitution was written in a way that allowed people to fucking own slaves. And yeah, no, I'm sure you could use this exact line of argumentation. I understand that in the United States, we hold the Constitution as this sacred thing, and that's how we do a lot of our rulings for laws. Can we all agree that that's more than a little stupid? I'm sorry, can we all agree that that type of reasoning, that, oh, well, random people 300 years ago didn't like this thing, therefore this thing bad, and that being the way that a lot of people view the Constitution, can we agree that that's not a good way of going about making laws, please? And if you don't think so, if you think that random-ass document written 300 years ago by people who happen to be in power at the time is the best way to view if things should or should not be legal, as opposed to viewing the actual consequences of them in practice, if you believe that that one is more important or better, please, can you give me a reason in the comment section below? Not only would I love the engagement down there, and I would love to see a lot of people that are just flat out wrong, I would also like to see if there is a good reason for that. Because I can't think of one outside of people going, well, they, thems, there were smarter than us, so we better do what they said. No, that is not how this works. That is not how any of this works. We have amendments specifically because this doesn't work. Alito's draft ruling would overturn a decision by the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that found the Mississippi law ran afoul of Supreme Court precedent by seeking to effectively ban abortions before viability. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionality constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect. Again, the constitutionally irrelevant does not matter. I get there's going to be somebody in the comment section saying that that's just how we do things around here, and that's why you don't know what you're talking about. I am making a normative statement about how things should be, not a nominal statement about how things are. Please, Frederick. Alito continues, adding that its reasoning was exceptionally weak and that the original decision had damaging consequences. The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. Why does that matter? Who the fuck cares? Who actually cares, Alito? Who? It is a brazen fallacy to make any decision based on history and tradition alone versus the ontology of the situation. You cannot merely make decisions based on history and tradition. Else you run into the issue of the what's the way this is worded to me when I was a kid. And one of the reasons why I always ended up asking why we believe certain things, and if somebody says because that's how we've always done it, I've never accepted that as a good reason. I never fucking will. Let's say you are learning how to cook a ham. And your mom is teaching you, and she cuts off the edges of the ham. Or she cuts off the ends of it, and then puts it in the oven. And you go, Mom, why do you cut the ends off? It's not like they're bad or anything. Why do you cut the ends off? Yeah, it's appeal to tradition fallacy, or appeal to antiquity. And then she goes, well, that's the way my mother always did it. And then you ask your grandma, hey, why do you cut the ends of the ham off? You taught Mom to do that, and I don't get it. And she goes, oh, well, that's how my mom always did it. And then you go to the nursing home where your great grandma is, and you go, hey, great grandma, can I ask you why you did this weird thing? Why did you teach grandma to cut the ends of the ham off? And she goes, I didn't teach her to do that. What are you talking about? And then you realize that the pan that your grandma has is big enough to fit the whole ham, but the pan your great grandma had was too small, so she had to cut the ends of the ham off to fit it into the actual tin before cooking it, thus creating the habit that was emulated by your grandma later. Your grandma had no reason to do it. She had a big enough tin by that time, but her mom cut the ends of the ham off. That's how they always did it. So there you go. The tradition was born out of necessity once, but that doesn't mean that that's where we are now. People do things in history because of the world they are in at that point. We, existing in a world now that is several years in the future, in this case, several centuries in the future, do not necessarily need to use the actions of people from the past as the precedent for our actions now. And any argument otherwise comes from a place of pure logic. Is this from personal experience? No, this is a story that was told to me, and I'm going to pass down because it illuminates the point so poignantly. Alito approvingly quotes a broad range of critics of the Roe decision. He also points to liberal icons such as the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe, who at certain points in their careers took issues with the reasoning in Roe or its impact on the political process. Okay, so now we have what seems to be quote mining for the purpose of this. That's cool. That's neat. Alito's skewering of Roe and the endorsement of at least 4 other justices for that unsparing critique is also a measure of the court's rightward turn in recent decades. Roe was decided 7-2 in 1973 with 5 Republican appointees joining 2 justices nominated by Democratic presidents. The overturning of Roe would almost immediately lead to stricter limits on abortion access in large swaths of the South and Midwest, with about half of the states set to immediately impose broad abortion bans. Yeah, we've seen that. Heartbeat bills have been spread out everywhere for the purpose of trying to make certain that they'd be able to have that infrastructure ready as soon as the Supreme Court wasn't going to be in their way. We've already seen this. The Constitution does not prohibit citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. So a thing you should know, a thing you should understand as a citizen of the United States. From what I understand, federally, you are not allowed to prosecute a citizen This is not legal advice. This is off the top of my head. But you can't prosecute a citizen for trying to seek medical aid in another state. Abortion is considered medical aid. It is considered a medical thing. It is categorically within that area, which means if you need an abortion and you are in a state that tries to actually take that right away, utilize your freedom of movement, go to a state that does allow for it, and utilize their services if you have the funding to that. I realize the problem with this, because there's going to be people who use that as evidence for why this isn't a big deal. The problem for this is that it bars abortions from people who do not have the money to have said freedom of movement. And then now we create an issue where abortion gets used as, or the lack of access to abortion gets to be a thing that prevents people from building generational wealth. And I have no idea if there are any issues with that at all in the United States, of any groups of people at all who have been historically disadvantaged from accessing generational wealth or building it in the first place. I don't know if that has ever happened, ever, in the history of ever in the United States. But here we are in a world where it's probably going to happen more if this actually goes through. At times, Alito's draft opinion takes an almost mocking tone as it skewers the majority opinion in Roe, written by Justice Harry Blockman, a Richard Nixon appointee who died in 1999. Said Roe expressed the feeling that the 14th Amendment was the provision that did the work. But its message seemed to be that the abortion right could be found somewhere in the Constitution, and that specifying its exact location was not of paramount importance. Alito declared that one of the central tenets of Roe, the viability distinction between fetuses not capable of living outside the womb and those which can, makes no sense. In several passages, he describes doctors and nurses who terminate pregnancies as abortionists. Oh, cool. So we got loaded language in here as well. Don't you like politically loaded language in the decisions that affect your everyday life? Isn't that cool? Yuli Kid says, if you're a conservative, I hate you. Why? There are conservatives who are pro-abortion. Why do you hate them? Moreover, do you think telling conservatives that you hate them is going to change their mind in any particular way? Do you think it will lead to a better, more functional society? Or do you think sitting down with them as humans and explaining to them how your human rights are being taken away and that's not okay, and making them empathize with you because they are human beings, which do you think is more effective? Telling them you hate them and they're stupid, or telling them that you are a person and you deserve to exist? You'll only talk to centrists? I wish I could live in that kind of fantasy land. I live literally in Georgia. Most everybody here is conservative. I don't have much of an option. Most people don't. Most people are locked in their geographical location. Moreover, I don't know how you actually make the distinction between a centrist and a conservative in the United States without them, like, throwing their voting record to you or something. Like, talk only gets you so far, but talk is for individuals. When we're talking about systems, we have a different conversation entirely. For systems, we have protests. For systems, we have ways of revolting. For individuals, we don't do that. What's the word here? There's a statement for this that I think has pretty much always held true. Give the benefit of the doubt to human beings, to individuals, but hold systems accountable. Literally, do not show any mercy to systems. So they don't care that you're a fucking person. They all want you dead. They don't all want you dead. Princess Morningstar, I understand that you are... I understand that issues like this are very heated. I understand that issues like this not only get under people's skin, but they are literally issues about their rights and very existence. But can I point out that a statement like all conservatives want you dead, you cannot quantify that statement. Yes, they do. They are effectively actively trying to... So every conservative in the United States right now is actively trying to kill you. Everyone. Every single one of the United States right now, they wake up in the morning and they think it is time to conceive of a way to kill Princess Morningstar. I I don't think that's the case. There are conservatives, especially vocal ones, who are very bad and who definitely do. I don't doubt that. There are conservatives who want to kill me. But I don't think I would ever fall back on a statement that says they all do this. Because when you do that, you are doing the same thing they do. You are creating an other, and you are putting a whole bunch of things on that other. Literally, the psychology article we covered right before this was about that very conversation. None of these things are functionally absolutes. It can feel like everything is falling around, but remember, being plugged into politics is one of the fastest way. It is one of the fastest ways to spiral your own mental health. If you feel like that is happening, the best thing you can do is disengage. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong and own you with facts and logic. I'm here to tell you why you don't have to feel like the world is trying to destroy you. Because there are people in that world who you would label enemy who are actually there and ready and able to help, who are willing to help. And you categorizing individual people into these subgroups in your mind specifically so that you can have the ability to name some of them the oppressors and some of them not, some of them the enemy and some of them not. It's not going to do you any good. It's going to do nothing but create a more anxiety-ridden environment for you. Like, and I agree with what Yvonne is saying there. Knowing what's going on in the world is important, but letting it destroy you, it's not worth all that. Delusional fucks. If I trust them, they hurt me all the time, every last single conservative I talk to actively hates me. How do you know that? How? Do you have access into their mind? Do you have the ability to read it? Like again, Yuli Kid, and I agree with that. If you want to leave the country because of all the shit happening, by all means, do not put yourself in a position where you are going to personally suffer. It's not worth that. Do what needs to be done so that you yourself don't suffer. But to label entire groups of people as enemies when you don't know their voting record, you don't know why they believe the things they do, you create a world where you can't change any of them. They're only enemies to kill at that point. The only solution you have at that point is to run or be violent. These are individual peoples. Their minds can be changed. Demonizing them, dehumanizing them, none of it helps. They are trying to wipe my people out. What else is there? Again, Princess Morningstar. There are individual people trying to wipe you out. And yes, maybe a majority of them, but not all. Any allies you might possibly have, you are alienating yourself. And I get that you're doing it as a form of self-defense because it feels like you have to. It feels like the world that's being created right now is one that, by its necessary fiber, must not contain you. Those feelings are valid. 110%, those feelings are valid. But the reality is the world is not as bleak as it seems. One, there are plenty of loopholes that can be utilized so that you can live your best life. Two, on top of that, there's also the ability to find those people that you think are enemies and sit down with them and talk. They might feel the same thing about you. The article's going on to talk about the legacy of Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy remained law than ever, at least 6 decades, so the court overturned it. It was egregiously wrong on the day it was decided, quoting Kavanaugh. Alito's draft opinion concludes it's a small type. It's a list about 2 pages worth of decisions in which the justices overruled prior precedents, in many stances reaching results praised by liberals. So it's just them trying to go, look at all of these, look at all these things that have changed. I think we're past the point of talking about that article now, though. So they attack me, hurt me. Whenever they see me, they try to destroy me on sight. Princess Morningstar, I'm going to say something that's going to sound very It's going to sound very mean and disparaging, and I don't mean it to, but there's really no other way to say it. Do you go outside? Just a simple yes or no question. Do you go out where people are? Yes, I fucking do, you fucking piece of shit. Okay. That's how you fucking know this. So, obviously, I have gotten under your skin. But if you want to just call me a piece of shit and put me into your enemy category as well, you are literally exemplifying my point. You're doing the exact thing. You are now moving you. You are pretending that those who physically attacked me can be reasoned with. Burn them all. I'm not pretending that the people who attacked you, who I am telling you do in fact exist, I am not telling you that they specifically can be reasoned with. I understand that things have happened to you in the past. I understand that they hurt. My point is not that. My point is that every person who labels themselves a conservative is not those people. You will not reason with the people trying to kill me. My point is that not all those people are trying to do that. My point is that that's not... Like, I literally never said that people who are actually trying to attack you right now can be reasoned with. I said that people who label themselves conservative can be reasoned with. You will literally lose yourself in this. I understand your pain. I understand what it can do to you, and I'm not saying any of your feelings right now are invalid. Everything that you are feeling right now because of what has happened to you is something that happened because of a legitimate thing that went on. I pointed out that asking if you would actually go, like if you had gone outside, I asked that specifically so that I could see if this was coming from a place of the internet or a place of walking out with people who actually can see you as a person and then still attack you. I have been mugged before. I have been attacked before. I've had this shit happen to me. But at no point does that mean that when that happens, I can go, aha, all of you are the same. I'm not trying to dehumanize you, and I'm not trying to minimize your experiences. I'm asking you to see those other people as human, not as targets to be attacked as well, and for you to accept that some of them, some people who label themselves in the same camp as those people, can be reasoned with and can change. And if you don't believe that people who label themselves as conservative can be reasoned with or can change, then why are you in my stream with somebody who used to be a conservative, me? I was a young earth creationist, Christian conservative. If you do not believe that those types of people can be reasoned with and change, then why are you in the chat with somebody who is literally that? Why are you in the chat with somebody who has real-world examples? Just as you have real-world examples of your pain, I have real-world examples of seeing people change their mind who would call themselves conservatives and move every which way in the political spectrum. Yuli Kitten says, we need several things. We need to vote Democrat down ballot, prisoner reenfranchisement, mass protest, etc. And I can agree with that. That's action. That is non-reactionary action. That is action that can actually do positive things in the country we are in right now. Fairy Queen Carrie says, Daryl Davis got 200 plus clan members to give up their robes. People can change. Yep. You can't win a world where the whole war with the whole world. You will lose. Yeah. Like, that's... I know that we're in an emotionally raw, like, moment, but the world isn't your enemy. It can feel like it is. It can. But that's just not reality. Things are bad. They can always get worse, but they can always get better too. The thing is, we have, as individuals, the ability to make things better, even if it's on a small scale. If you've got a friend who is trans and is feeling like they too are being attacked by several things, you can take your experiences and help that person and go, look, I can empathize with you. I can make your world a little less bleak. That is a thing you can do. Demonizing everybody to the right of you, that's not going to accomplish any of the goals you want. All it's going to do is take the pain that you already feel right now, and it's going to multiply it. And it's going to multiply it over several years. I think on that emotionally raw moment, instead of trying to hop back on the rails for the rest of the details on the Supreme Court ruling, I think it's better to leave on that particular note. End the video on that one. Maybe somebody will get something out of that conversation. Or maybe I'll lose 10,000 subscribers because there are people who disagree with the stance that people's minds can be changed. And yet they are watching a political YouTuber. If you're watching a political YouTuber just to reinforce your own beliefs, what are you doing on this side of the internet? Anyways, insert end of video tagline here.